Hello YouTube. Okay, we've got it printing. The gear that I was missing, the extruder gear, came in finally after ordering it from 3 different people. That's always fun. And what I did is I took apart and started using parts from an old ATX power supply. As you can see here, I need to print the mount for the power supply and properly wire it, but it's good enough to get the machine running. The critical temporary piece until I can print, and actually I'm printing it now, is the mount for the CPU board this thing uses. I went with the Mini Rambo is the name of it, which is the exact motherboard, if you will, that the Prusa i3 Mark II through 2.5S ships with, so I can run the actual firmware. I had to find a better way to mount the board because it was just kind of laying on the floor, and I didn't want it to become a victim of static electricity. You can see I used some aluminum board standoffs and some 25mm cap head screws I had left over from the build. In this piece of metal, I used my Dremel to score a line on the power supply casing where it already had that angle. Oh, and I went into Tinkercad and precisely measured the mounting hole points for the frame that this piece uses, the real piece uses. So when I drilled holes for my frame here, that they would be in the right place, so as not to, it looks like that screw cap head might interfere with the X carriage motor mount, but it doesn't. Yeah, anyways, little mini ramble there, but that is what's mounting the motherboard to the frame in the original location. So when it's printed, then I'll use the actual part and I'll print the door for it and everything. This is just the base. But this keeps the wires sort of in a place where they won't get all tangled with each other. The board is properly mounted and not at risk of flopping around or possibly getting caught in between some moving parts on the floor. Notice the LED has been installed. I'll put in the comments of this video the actual surface mount parts I used. Printed Solid is an awesome company, and I think they are able to have parts that the original Prusas make made and available from a company called LDO Motors, Lima Delta Oscar Motors, and I think they may, that company may even be the original provider of the heated bed and the Pinda probe, the bed level sensor. Last time I talked to you guys, you know, I was leery of the clones, and I didn't think that they were sensitive enough, so I've got an actual Prusa Pinda probe. They call it Pinda, which I think means something crazy in Czech, but for everywhere else, I noticed it just got the layer 2, so the front fan kicked on. Yeah, that's the name of their bed level sensor, and you can only order parts from Prusa if you're an existing customer, and that kind of defeats the purpose of this build. It's not that I wanted to avoid buying anything from Prusa. I think they're a great company. It's just I kind of wanted to source all the parts myself and build this thing and see if I could do it for a little bit cheaper than what a kit would cost. And I would say you can build it for cheaper. You can absolutely build it for cheaper. If you're willing to use AliExpress and just order from overseas vendors and go as cheap as possible, you could probably cut the cost of the kit in half. I think because of quality control issues, you'll probably have to buy some things a couple of times until you get the right thing. However, I didn't want to go absolute cheapest. I wanted to go Amazon in case I got something that was defective. I could return it and not have any issues. And I also went with some name brand parts to ensure that I wouldn't have any problems. If you have followed this build, you'll know I originally started watching a guy from YouTube, Tom's 3D, and he built the cheapest Prusa clone possible. And so he didn't use the actual motherboard or the actual firmware. He didn't use the Mark 42 heated bed with the bed level sensor features added in. And so he paid a lot less, right? That wasn't what I was going for. I wanted to be frugal, but I wanted a 100% clone. So I got a Mark 42 bed. I'm running the actual firmware. I have as I mentioned in the last video, a brand name power supply. Some guys don't like there to be, whoops, watch this. My little cheesy Lego Technic made pulley for the filament guide. I'll have to 3D print a better solution. Some people don't like extra power fans. I'm like, man, you know, working with electronics, why wouldn't you want to keep something cool? It's not like it's offensively loud. It's not like it sounds like a dentist drill or something, right? So I got the name brand, very reliable, robust, and safe power supply. When you run the actual Prusa firmware, it's got like bed heater runaway cutoff, so it's got some more safety features built in, and it just provides for a little bit more polished design, although there's nothing wrong with using the ramps Arduino setup and going maximum cheapness. So anyways, even using Amazon and trying to use USA vendors where I could, like for example Printed Solid, and using, one of the biggies, I used an actual E3D V6 heated and hot end, because I've heard the clones have gotten better, but you know, considering it's the core of this machine and you can have a lot of problems if your hot end is not extruding right, I figured why not, you know. I probably could have saved some money trying to order in bulk and going like maximum cheapness for let's say like the cap head screws and the threaded rods. I could have used imperial threaded and not the actual metric thread, but you know, I wanted metric. I wanted everything to match what was you know, in the manuals from Prusa when I was assembling it, and it's how this thing was designed, so that's how I wanted to put it together. I ended up ordering all screws, nuts, washers, threaded rods, etc. from a company called Fastenal. They're based in Indianapolis, and they were able to ship everything to me really quickly, and I think it came to about $65 for all of the fasteners. But I gotta tell you, like, I got the right stuff, right? There were some instances where Prusa calls for 18 millimeter in length, and while Fastenal does list those as part numbers, they just weren't available. And so I had to get 20, and with my Dremel, shorten a bunch of screws, and that was a pain, but you can do it, right? And yeah, I think it came out pretty nice, to be honest with you. The only remaining issue I've got right now, beyond having to print the power supply base and the actual computer board mount, which I'm printing right now, is if you look at the tensioner for the extruder, I started out with some screws. I don't know if I have any handy. Oh yes, I do. To show you, I got a pack of 10 off Amazon, And these seem to be what a lot of guys are using, but they're a little bit too long, and the wire of these springs is very thick, and the tension, it's so high such that if you use the actual screws that are called for the tensioner system, it ends up, if you compress the springs enough so that you can get those screws threaded into the square nuts that are in the extruder body, it holds the bearing tensioner against the filament, against the extruder gear too tightly, and you get a bunch of clicking, and it under extrudes when it clicks. Not a good solution. Those screws I have there are not perfect, right? I could get better prints. Basically the bottom surface, like it's doing right now, could be a little teeny bit better if I had the proper springs. And what these temporary springs are, they're from ballpoint pins. And then I have to screw them in so they're almost completely compressed, but they have a little bit of play. And it seems to be working right now. Anyways, just looping back real quick, the printed solid bed is great, but it comes just a bare bed, and there's no LED or the resistor for the LED that drops the 12 volt input of the bed down to the 3 volts that, I think it's 3 volts, I need to double check my notes, that the LED uses. And those have to be surface mount parts. They're really small. You can do it. So I'll put the notes. I kind of nerded out a bit, but I used a resistance calculator for LEDs, and I found the right values so that it's properly biased to the right voltage that the LED needs. And it's I found the right color too, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that's where we have it. I still need to update the battery holder on Thingiverse. I printed out just enough. You can see, look at this bottom, I hope it focuses. Look at the bottom quality is actually not too shabby, but then it started getting a little nasty on the next layer, and that was while I was playing around with trying to get the right extruder springs. But this printed enough so that I could see if this part is the right distance. You see the over here we've got the mount holes, but I don't know if you can see that this part doesn't quite come to the frame. I must not have measured it correctly. I thought I did. Kind of crazy, so I'll update that. Anyways, to be continued, but that's it for today, and thanks for watching. Bye.